Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a really fascinating topic, the blueprint and the choice, and how we actually navigate Vedic astrology. If you've ever wanted to understand how this ancient system truly operates under the hood, stripping away all the fluff and mysticism, then you're in the right place. Let's jump right into the mechanics.
Your life is pre-written. Now that statement right there, that is easily the single biggest misconception floating around astrology circles today. There's this quiet, pervasive idea that your birth chart is basically a sealed cosmic contract, one you somehow signed without ever reading the fine print. People think it means everything you'll ever do, or achieve, or struggle with is rigidly fixed from the moment you take your very first breath. But honestly, that is simply not how it works.
Okay, let's dive into this and separate the myth from the reality. On one hand, you have fate. That's the myth. It's this deterministic fortune-telling approach that basically turns you into a passive victim of the stars. But the actual reality, astrology is a dynamic, living map of tendencies and timings. It maps out consequences. Think of it less like a magic crystal ball showing a fixed, inescapable destiny, and way more like a highly advanced filtration system that tracks your personal energy.
To really understand this map, we have to look at how the engine actually runs. Every serious, accurate Vedic prediction rests on four incredibly specific pillars. We've got the blueprint, the activation, the timeline, and the trigger. The whole system is structured like a remarkably precise machine. And the thing is, if you miss even one of these pillars, the entire reading just falls flat. So we're going to walk through this logically, from step 1 to step 4, so you can see exactly how this prediction engine is built.
Let's start with the first pillar, the blueprint. This is your natal chart, often referred to as the D1. It represents your raw, baseline potential and your internal wiring. It points out your natural inclinations, your blind spots, and those deeply ingrained karmic tendencies. But look at the emphasis here. It reveals what can happen, absolutely not what will happen. This is exactly why two people can be born with strikingly similar placements, yet end up living vastly different lives. The birth chart is literally just potential energy. It still has to be activated.
So how do we solve that problem of potential? Well, that brings us to Pillar 2, Divisional Charts. If your natal chart is the seed, this activation grid shows us if and where that seed actually sprouts. Every specific area of your life, whether we're talking about your career, your marriage, or your wealth, has its own microchart. This step is absolutely crucial because it proves whether a promised potential in your main chart is going to manifest strongly, weakly, or if it's just going to get severely delayed. A promise without the backing of this grid often just stays purely theoretical.
Moving right along to the third pillar, we have the Dasha System. You can think of this as the timeline engine of your life. Systems like the Vimshottari Dasha take your life and divide it into these distinct planetary periods, where each planet comes online to activate specific themes. But here is the crucial caveat you need to remember. It delivers results based entirely on your alignment with its energy. A dasha doesn't just blindly drop random life events into your lap. It heavily interacts with how you are currently choosing to operate.
And finally, we hit Pillar 4, transits. This is the exact trigger mechanism. Transits are the final switch being flipped. But, and this is a big but, they do not create events out of thin air. If the dasha is the overarching storyline of a chapter in your life, the transit is the exact scene where the action unfolds. They merely trigger what has already been promised by the blueprint, supported by the grid, and timed by the engine.
So, there we have the four pillars of this incredible machine. We've got the potential, the activation, the timeline, and the trigger. But I want you to pause for a second and really ask yourself, what is the crucial missing piece in predicting your life? Because if we only rely on these four mechanical pillars, we are still missing the single most important variable in the entire equation. Without it, astrology is just dead mechanical math. Any guesses on what it is?
It's your decisions. That is the missing variable. And this right here is where we shift from a dry, mechanical astrology lesson into a wildly empowering psychological toolkit. This is what makes astrology actually feel alive. It isn't just planetary mathematics. It's a continuous, living interaction between the cosmic timeline and your daily human agency.
And this brilliantly illustrates how it plays out in the real world. Imagine you just entered a Saturn Dasha. Now, Saturn's energy aggressively demands discipline, structure, and responsibility. So life is going to start throwing situations at you where you're forced to make a choice. Will you do the hard, correct thing, or are you going to take the easy, comfortable route? And listen, every single time you make that choice, you are doing far, far more than just picking an option in the moment.
What you're actually doing is participating in what we call the layered sphere model. I want you to imagine yourself as a giant sphere. Right at the absolute center, your core, is your true nature, your raw natal chart. But as you grow up and live your life, every single decision you make wraps a brand new layer around that core. You're constantly wrapping yourself up in accumulated layers of conditioning, all based on whether you routinely chose that hard path or the easy path.
Let's look at exactly what those layers are made of. You aren't just making choices. You are actively building layers of habits, patterns, reactions, and coping mechanisms. Taking the easy, avoidant path doesn't just give you a fleeting moment of relief, it literally calcifies into these rigid layers over time. So by the time you reach adulthood, you are no longer just operating from your pure cosmic core, right? You are operating through thick, heavy, built-up layers of behavioral conditioning.
So let's see how this translates into actual results. Let's say a Venus Dasha arrives, and it's promising comfort, relationships, and ease. Well, those results don't just arrive in a vacuum. They have to pass through your layers. If you spent your Saturn period building layers of discipline, Venus filters through that and hands you refined luxury. But what if your layers are built on avoidance and laziness? Venus filters through that and you end up with indulgence without stability. The cosmic promise from the stars was exactly the same, but the quality of your reality changed entirely.
Now, this brings up a genuinely fascinating phenomenon. Have you ever noticed, or maybe heard astrologers talk about, how predictions often hit with striking, almost eerie precision for younger people? Like, why do you think that is? Is the magic of the stars just somehow stronger when we're kids?
Not at all. The answer comes down entirely to conditioning. When we're young, our conditioning is incredibly low. Kids just have way fewer layers and way fewer distortions. Because of that, younger people act as a much cleaner, more direct expression of their natal charts. But adulthood? Adulthood brings a massive spike in conditioning. As you age, your thousands of personal choices begin to interact incredibly heavily with your planetary promises. Your chart hasn't changed at all. The delivery mechanism, which is you, has. And this is exactly why just glancing at the chart of someone in their 30s or 40s isn't going to cut it. You absolutely have to analyze their past. You have to look at the energetic periods they've already lived through, how those specific energies shaped their behavior, and crucially, whether they aligned with or resisted those life lessons. You have to understand their psychological history to know how potent a future transit is actually going to be for them.
Which leads us to the ultimate proof of human agency. Same sky, different structure. Think about this. Two people can be born around the same time and experience the exact same planetary transit. Yet, one of them experiences a massive, life-altering breakthrough, while the other experiences total pressure or even a total collapse. Why? Because while the sky above them is identical, their internal, layered structures which they built through thousands of past decisions are completely different.
When we finally grasp this, the entire paradigm completely shifts. Astrology is a behavioral mirror. It's not just a parlor trick for predicting external events. It is a profound, incredibly accurate reflection of your internal psychology. This is the exact intersection where the whole system shifts away from being something mystical and spooky and transforms into something highly functional and deeply practical.
So, what does a functional prediction actually look like? It's about identifying how you naturally tend to react under pressure. It's about spotting your specific, unique triggers for self-sabotage. This system gives you the literal map to break your repeating negative patterns. And most importantly, it teaches you how to actively align your behavior with upcoming cosmic energies so you can actually surf the wave instead of just being crushed by it.
So the crucial point here really comes down to your approach. The old mystical approach views the chart as fixed fate, which basically leaves you as a totally passive observer, just sitting around waiting for life to happen to you. But the functional approach, which is the true reality of the system, views the chart as a map of tendencies. And your role in all this? You are the active decision maker. You are the one sitting in the driver's seat.
To really cement this in your mind, think of it using this brilliant modern metaphor. It's a cosmic operating system. Your natal chart, that's your base OS, your raw hardware and baseline software. The dashas are your major system updates that roll in and change the whole interface of your life. The transits are just the daily push notifications popping up on your screen. But your decisions? Your decisions are the user input, and your life is exactly what happens when all of these interacting elements boot up together.
Which brings us to this incredibly powerful realization. Your chart is not your prison. You are not trapped by your tricky placements. You are not doomed by a challenging Dasha period. The stars incline, they do not bind. Your human agency, Your everyday ability to choose discipline over avoidance, to choose growth over temporary comfort. That is the ultimate deciding factor in the quality of your life.
I want to wrap up this explainer by leaving you with this final, somewhat provocative thought. Are you using this system to surrender control, just blindly hoping the stars are going to fix your life? Or are you using it to gain crystal clear awareness of where your choices actually matter? The blueprint is there, it's mapped out, but the choice is always yours. Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep making those active, conscious choices.